Okay, all good here, all good there, here, there, and everywhere. Very good.
That
All
would be a
right.
good song, man.
Sorry?
That would be a good song title.
Indeed.
It is, in fact, it is, if you know your Beatles.
Yes. Well, I know of the Beatles. I'm not a Beatles fan, but I do
All
know.
right, they did a song called Here, There, and Everywhere.
Yeah. I think I've probably heard a
Da,
little bit
da,
of it.
da, da,
Da, da, da, da. Okay, all right.
da.
Hello and welcome. My name is Richard Simon. I am Cloud Therapist. This is the March 2026 episode of Cloud State of Play. I know, we're running a little bit late on these episodes of Cloud State of Play, but hey, I've been busy live streaming, right? You guys have been watching surely all the live streams and so on. So yeah, check out some of the live streams. We did one on KubeCon Amsterdam, AWS Summit London, did a Wisdom episode with Same Sapta. Shout out to Same. And obviously, we did our first Class State of Play live. That was our first live stream on Class State of Play as well. So do check those out. I'll drop a link in the description of the video for you. So yes, you can't really say I've not been doing anything on the channel for the last sort of couple of months. It's been quite busy. Now, it's been said that wine is best drunk when it's mature and fully bodied. I can't speak about the body parts, but here's someone who's definitely got some maturity on him. It's the illustrious Paul Bevan.
Oh, I love your introductions. I think they're brilliant. Yeah, okay, yeah.
How you doing?
My mature body appreciates that. I'm doing well, thank you. I'm doing
Yeah,
well.
I was laughing as I was writing that, and I didn't get ChatGPT to write that for me. So there you go. Everything good with you?
All your own work. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Copyright Richard Simon, exactly. Are you how you doing? Everything good with you? Enjoying the kind of the sun coming out a little bit? We're kind of in that spring
Oh
sort of
yeah,
thing.
God, yeah. I've just had, wonderful few days in the Lake District and not a cloud in the sky for about 4 days.
Fantastic. Wow.
Absolutely incredible. So
Fabulous.
really good. Very good.
Fabulous. Cool. All right. So we're going to be doing, what are we doing? Let's have a look at our topics for this month. I think it'll be a good idea. So just starting my just making sure my timing is right here. Okay. Yes. So our topics for this month, guy, are really good. So do make sure that you stick with us until the end to actually hear all three topics. I think you're going to learn quite a lot, and they're quite sort of diverse as well in terms of the subject matter. So, first topic: path to sovereign tech stack. That's the first article, and it says the path to a sovereign tech stack is via a commodified tech stack. So, we'll see what that means. We'll get into a little bit more detail about that. Second topic is microservices anti-patterns. What not to do with microservices. So it's actually a really good approach to not always just talk about how to do it and blah 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 and when to do it and so on, but actually the sort of things that will screw up your microservices designs. So this will be a good one to do. That's the second topic. And the third one is actually by Paul Bevan himself. Now, what did you call it? Intent-based application development? Was that right? Or is that a
Oh God,
longer title?
what did I call it? Intent over interfaces was the
Oh,
title.
ooh.
So yeah, it is about intent-based development, but it was intent over interfaces was the title.
Intent over
Why
interfaces.
GenAI could finally fix the business IT disconnect.
Right. So that's the subtitle I was looking for, and I completely forgot to write that down here. Okay. Excellent. So yeah, so we'll kind of go through those topics. Make sure, like I say, you stay with us. Lots of really good, interesting stuff for you here. So do stick with us until the end if you can. But before we get into the topics, here is a quick channel message for you. Did you know that 80% of you watching right now aren't subscribed yet to this channel? Come on, guys, we can do better, surely. So please hit subscribe and the notification bell. It costs nothing, but it really helps me to keep making more videos for you. All right, back to the therapy session. So our first topic is called the path to a sovereign stack is via a commodified tech stack. This is actually an article that a chap called David Eves has put out. He's a professor and practitioner of digital era government. I think it was a post on LinkedIn that we picked up, but there's actually a full article on it. We'll drop all the links for you in the description so you can check it out for yourself. So yeah, a digital era government sounds like a bit of a Quango generator to me. What does that say to you, Paul, that title?
Oh, yeah, a little bit of the same, but you're naturally getting into, oh my God, they're now going to create something, something heavy again. I think it's almost like, really?
Right. So let's get a quote first from the article. So David Eves says governments today face a similar infrastructure choice with cloud computing. The emerging consensus offers two bad options: accept permanent lock-in to US hyperscalers, or spend billions on domestic sovereign clouds at risk of creating new proprietary standards, which will be more expensive and less resilient. Both paths reduce agency. Both paths increase risk. End quote. So what do you think about that?
Well, that first bit, the way you sort of set it up, you're thinking, yeah, you can see the challenge. There's no, almost we've seen it, and it appears later in his article about, trying to, Gaia X and the sort of EU Data Acts and all those that really are driving, trying to drive what they call de jure standards, making the standards law. And he's making the point, when he gets on with it, is that you need to do it through commoditization, which is, is your standard. So his opening was okay, but I've got some challenges with some of the things you've said later on, I think.
Agreed. And I mean, for me, and I will let me say it now, but we'll kind of get into a little bit more detail as well. But just to kind of put the exact summary forward, as they say, it's not really, for me, it's not about commodifying. It's really about abstracting. For me, it's not, because we've already commodified and he talks about infrastructure specifically later. We've already commodified the infrastructure by running a cloud platform on top of it and services on top of it that don't care what the infrastructure is anymore. That's the whole point. So it's not really commodifying, the infrastructure and kind of, making it, I don't know, whatever, sort of available from, multiple vendors or something like that. But it's really about abstracting away from the services that are provided to you, let's say, by the hyperscalers. So, because that keeps somebody who's in the public cloud and using all of the services that are free from that hyperscaler. So things like your observability, tools, your DevOps platform, your FinOps, and everything else. You rely on the services that are in the, provided for free by the hyperscaler, or the ones that are in their sort of marketplace.
Provide for free?
Well, I mean, some of the tools are available for you for free, so you can make use of them as part of your platform.
But I think it's slightly erroneous to say they're free, because you're paying as part of the overall platform price.
True. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but to the, you're not having. Let's put it this way: you're not having to pay more to use some of the services that are available to you. Now, there's obviously other ones that are third party, which you do have to pay for, and you go through a marketplace to get those, as well as bring your own. So you kind of bring your own stuff and put in there as well.
The one thing that I actually would challenge completely is the fact that and this is the underlying issue with trying to follow his arguments all the way through about commoditization and about standardization, because he's actually one for trying to get standards, de facto standards going that we can use. So two things struck me immediately was that the infrastructure layer is not as commoditized as we think, particularly with the arrival of AI, and GPUs, and very specific. You look at an AI, what they're calling the AI factory these days, the actual, yes, all the component parts are sort of fairly off-the-shelf component parts. My goodness me, if you look into any data center now, it's not racked CPUs everywhere you look, and lots of very specific. So there was a little bit of that. I was also very intrigued. He was talking about the fact that he believed that there was, you couldn't be an AWS cloud expert and a Google cloud expert. It was too difficult. There were too many changes. And I'm thinking, and I'm not technical enough to say, in the early days, there were definitely, if you wanted to move from AWS cloud to Google Cloud or to Azure, then there was a fair amount of work you had to do to make it work. I thought it had got a lot easier. Now you're probably better than situated than me to say whether it has got easier to shift across your workloads across clouds.
So there's two things here. So does he mean actual changes, or does he mean differences between the two? And if you say changes, then does that mean changes as in the services that are coming through from Google and Amazon are changing? Because
I think take Kubernetes,
right.
as an example. In the early days of Kubernetes, there was a clear indication that actually the way in which AWS and Google and Microsoft ran Kubernetes was slightly different, enough to make it a little bit of a transition effort to move. You couldn't just literally take your workload and drop it in.
No, and it's still the case. I mean, every distribution has its quirks, right? Yeah. But the underlying, way that it works is the same, because Kubernetes is Kubernetes essentially, unless you really go in there and make some fundamental changes. So you could, you could take your containers with the images and then run them from one platform to the other, but you'll have to make changes to the design that you have, because AWS does it this way and Google does it that way. But when it comes to actually running the workloads, there shouldn't be any modification requirements. The GCP or GKE, so it's the Google Kubernetes engine, is not going to say, oh no, I can't run the image like that, so you're going to have to reconstitute the image for me. Yeah, that should, as far as I know, and correct us if we're wrong, by the way, that should be the same. But how you create your cluster, how you provision it, how you configure it, set up all your desired states and, all that kind of other jazz, that will be different, especially if you're using the XKS services. So the GKE, AKS, EKS kind of thing, and not bringing your own. You're not like running, Kubermatic or OpenShift or something like that, in those clouds. But anyway, so that's kind of I think I don't necessarily agree with that, because changes is one thing and differences is another. Changes is kind of what changes the hyperscaler makes to these services, and largely this shouldn't really affect you. It's like an upgrade or a patch update or a new feature that comes into the next version of Kubernetes. And they've been talking endlessly about the dynamic distribution or dynamic rescheduling capability that the latest version of Kubernetes. So that's a feature, but you don't have to necessarily take advantage of it. It's there, but you don't have to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think he was just making the point that moving your workloads from one cloud to another was not straightforward.
Nobody disagrees with that.
And he was trying to get to the point where, he was really proposing, open standards as a way of it being literally vanilla across the piece, across both infrastructure and particularly platform as a service seems to be one of his beefs, that you sort of get it going across that level. He at least avoided the idea that it was right to go down the sort of Gaia X route or the the sort of build your own, give it. I mean, he said, you'd end up giving it to a telco if you wanted to do your own sovereign cloud, and that probably wasn't very good. Conversation we were having offline anyway. That isn't necessarily the thing to do. So, but he was very much making that point, and he made the analogy with, which I thought was, at first I thought was quite clever, and I thought then it actually didn't help his case at all, which is the railroads and the grids. The railroad standardization, and very interesting little story about the Southern Railroad in the States. Moving from was it from 5 foot to 4 foot 6, and having to do God knows how many thousand miles of change of track. And I get that, but back in the late 90s in Unisys, we were talking about utility computing. And we were using the same sort of analogies about the grid and about, you just plug it in and it works. And the railroad one, we'd use the same, because you could, but this is far too complex. There's too many different moving parts. That don't necessarily all change at the same time. So you're never going to have a utility in the same way that you do that. So he's trying to aim for something that probably will never stand still long enough to be able to make it work.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the way that he's kind of, wanting to commodify will eventually just not make it competitive. I mean, the government might as well just run their own cloud in that way, and then just offer it to all the quangos and local authorities and, government entities and so on, and just run their own cloud. Because if you commodify to the point where there's no USPs, unique selling features or points, then that you'll kill the competition. It might be fine in a sort of a socialist kind of sort of way of looking at it, but it'll kill the business. Nobody will want to do that to that point if it's all, if it's all looks the same.
Yeah, I was, and there was another point that when he was talking about, sovereign clouds.
Yeah, and then he takes it to that, right? Yeah,
he takes it to sovereign clouds, and you think. Actually, I used another analogy in my head when I was reading it. That was what happened in the Soviet Union, with motor cars, and also say railways, because I actually went to the Soviet Union in the late 60s, and we all had to decamp at the East German Soviet border while they changed the bogies so they could go from 4 foot 6 to 5 foot or whatever the Russian railways, the Soviet railways were.
Yeah.
But the cars, you think, all right. Standardized, you end up with larders and trabants. It's crazy because you're not competitive any longer.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying.
You're not competitive. So I just think he's barking up the wrong tree. It's a great idea, but but this idea and the JEDI contract, because he talked about the JEDI contract.
Yes.
Who, don't know this enormous American U.S. Defense Department contract that they put out, and they were trying to nudge them all towards sort of standardization. And the hyperscalers, just turned to the lawyers and said, kill it stone dead, please, because it's quote unquote anti-competitive.
Well, it is, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, like I said, you'll get it to a point where there is nothing for them to do, and they're just about breaking even because there's no further services for them to offer. Everything is in the catalog as part of this cloud that you've created, this commodified cloud that you've created. There's nothing for them to innovate. They can't bring in something new until it's approved and then goes across the whole, cloud, so everybody can use it. And then you're kind of thinking, well, I'm Google, he's Amazon, he's Microsoft. What are we doing here?
Yeah, we only get innovation through competition.
Yeah,
That's what we get. Yes, you will get a level of lock-in somewhere. You always argue that there is a level of lock-in,
yeah,
but actually, if it's delivering value, and the other, then should we be that bothered? If the lock-in is really not allowing companies and individuals to move forward then you would worry about it. Are we paying too much for it because of the lock-in?
yeah,
Possibly.
possibly.
But again, the innovation is going to come from the private sector, not from the public sector.
Yeah, and that's kind of where you get your ROI as well. And you and I kind of go back and forth a lot on, and sort of champion the point of that enterprises are not appreciating the value
Yeah.
of the technology that they use,
Yeah.
the value that it provides.
And the other thing that actually we need to hammer home is governments don't move fast enough. You know,
Yeah.
Building railroads is quite slow. Building the internet and the superhighway, and all the things that have gone on in the cloud in the last few years shows just how fast it now moves.
Yeah.
Way faster than governments can move.
Yeah. Indeed.
Way faster.
Indeed. So so I think my disagreement with it is, like I said, the commodifying is not. It's already commodified. That's the level of commodity that we can get to with the cloud by not caring about the hardware infrastructure anymore. The next bit and this ties in with the next part, which is the digital sovereignty aspect of it, is really cloud abstraction. It's this idea of taking away a number of the services and functions that you would normally put into, let's say, a public cloud, and actually running those, wherever you want to run them, either locally or in a colo or your own data center, or whatever it is. And that gives you, it kind of creates this control plane layer that you have control over, versus all of those eggs being in the hyperscaler basket, right? So you take away, pretty much everything, from your automation tools, your DevOps tools, your FinOps tools, the tools that allow you to, do your platform engineering, for example. Everything, you pretty much take everything out from that hyperscaler and actually run those independently. So that could be local copies if that's what you're going to do. So actually run them, like I said, in your data center. Or you rely on SaaS solutions. If you're doing observability, you don't use CloudWatch, the free tier or the paid tier from AWS, but actually you use, I don't know, Dynatrace, let's say, or Datadog or somebody like that. So that that abstracts those activities, those ops and services that you would normally rely on from that hyperscaler. You abstract them away from that cloud. So then you have this control plane layer that allows you to control everything that you're doing, your images, as we said, your operations, that includes your observability, your FinOps, and everything else. And that data, you can dictate where you want that. You can tell Dynatrace, I want it in I want it in Europe, I want it in the EU, I want it in the UK, I want it to run locally. And they will point you to that. And that's kind of, I think, a better approach, because we've already, like I said, we have already abstracted from the hardware. That's the whole point of the cloud, was to abstract from hardware. So commoditizing the infrastructure, the hardware, is neither here nor there. I don't really care what the badge is already on the cloud.
I don't disagree with any of that. I think you mentioned the word data there in the middle of it, and I think data is one of the areas that there's potentially still some danger, in terms of using the hyperscalers, even when they're trying to say they're providing sovereign clouds, as they're all trying to do now. They're all trying to provide sovereign clouds. And I think there's a real concern that actually the US Cloud Act, which still has taken fairly large chunks out of the old Patriot Act, still enables the US authorities to request, demand. I don't know what you know, think about it.
Probably the latter.
Probably the latter, yes. Actually, if it's with Donald, then he'll probably drop some, special forces in there into the data center to make sure that it's done.
Yeah.
But, so I think there are some issues there around data sovereignty that we need to be aware of, that the minute you put that onto the hyperscalers platform, whether that's in the UK, in Germany, in wherever, in theory, if the Americans really wanted to get a hold of it, could they? Yes, probably they could. So I think, there's a level of sovereignty there that we need to think about. But I don't think that necessarily impacts what this guy's talking about, David Eaves is talking about. I think this is much more around, where's this one going and how do we provide the standards to make it such a commodity? I think it's almost, well, he's coming at this with a government mindset, a political mindset, not with a let's develop, where do developments come from? They don't come from government. I'm sorry.
Yes, exactly. And there's no innovation there. So like I said, my beef on it is that it's not really, I don't really care about, because he specifically talks about the infrastructure, and I don't care about the infrastructure anymore because I'm in a cloud. That's the whole point. But I do care where my observability tool is processing. So where my metrics, my melt data, is going. Is it being processed in North Virginia, or is it in a UK region, right, or a availability zone? So that I would care about. And that, for me, that control plane, abstraction, cloud abstraction, creating that control plane is the next step for me to try and make that happen. And I think that's more important because that is literally taking services out of the hyperscaler and putting them somewhere that you want to. Yeah. Now, admittedly, that's more on the operations side. So it's the provisioning, it's the monitoring, it's the cost management of it. It's not the it's not the corporate data, it's not the enterprise data, so it's not the databases and things like that. But again, you can do that with those as well. You can go to enterprise DB and say, furnish, put it all in this colo for me and furnish me with your big database, and then big animal or whatever it is that they call it, and then I'll put all my stuff on that. I'm not going to put it in in the SQL Server or whatever it is in an Oracle's cloud or Microsoft's cloud or whatever. I'm not going to put it there. I'll put it exactly where I want it. So you can still do that with with your own data, and that is moving you towards sovereignty, because obviously, as we know, data is the one of the biggest sort of legs of the sovereignty stool. Now, the other bit that I wanted to mention was that ultimately you can't really achieve 100% sovereignty. So if you are all running it from your house and everything's running in your house, the software that you're running it on is probably open source, and that open source project is probably a US open source project, and it's administered by the CNCF or something. So certainly if you're running Kubernetes, that's what it is. So you can't really sort of achieve that 100%. You'd have to kind of write your own software as well and operating system to make it
it's crazy. I mean, the whole world relies on open systems, if you like.
Yeah.
Whether that's logistics, physical systems, free trade, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Trying to turn the clock back and put the borders up, whether those are digital borders or whatever, is nonsense.
Yeah, exactly. So I think David kind of wants to NHS the cloud somehow, some kind of a leftist socialist collective sort of, own nothing and be happy type of approach, or produce services and don't make any profit on them type of, and be happy type of approach. Now, the other point I wanted to, there was another quote from, so he says, my latest article argues that the path to digital sovereignty runs through commodification. Government's North Star should be focused on making it trivially easy to move workloads, data, and applications between providers. Two concrete points, two concrete starting points. Mandate S3 compatible storage for government procurement. Is he serious? Is he going to go to Microsoft and say, I want you to adopt an AWS standard, and to Google? I mean,
and with the best will in the world, we've talked enough about how the demands of AI, the demands of melt data, all the sort of things are changing the nature of the underlying data storage environment.
Yeah.
Is an S3 bucket right anyway?
Yeah, and then the next point is, he says, commodify essential platform services, and he lists payment, notification, and identification, or identity. Now, I don't know whether he means this on a cloud infrastructure layer, or does he mean it as in an application layer? Because payment and notification is potentially just applications that people use, right? So you pay for something, or you get notified about something. But identity can be in both. So either your identity as an individual in this big socialist government cloud, or is the identity of the services that are running, the app services that are running the cloud. So I don't know if he's mixing that up, or maybe he just means it at the app layer. Now, if he means it at the app layer, what do I care what the app is? I couldn't care less.
Exactly. I mean, I took it that he meant the app layer, the application.
Okay, but then that means, so what?
Yes, that was my view. It was like,
I don't care.
Yeah.
As a cloud service provider, as a hyperscaler, I couldn't care less what you run on it.
Yeah.
Because it's not my app. I've not developed it. I'm not going to develop it. Right. And if you're going to say, oh, it's a payment app, I don't care.
Fine.
Yeah. So I'm not concerned with that. That's a government thing. So again, we go back to, what do we want to do here? Do we want the government to take over the cloud, or create its own cloud and hire 5,000 IT professionals?
I think he was, I don't agree with him, but I mean, I think what he was trying to suggest was that the government or governments across the world, and he was trying to use GenAI as maybe one of the poster childs until it was poster children, until it was stopped, and by legal action. It was that they have the power to, if you like, make sure things become open standards, if you like, de facto, which is pie in the sky. It's absolutely, that was the one thing that just blew my mind, that thought, he has got to be joking that if he thinks that any government has the ability to nudge business far enough into open standards. It'll be you and me and businesses and just general, innovation going on in the market in the place that creates the de facto standards. He was all for de facto standards.
Yeah.
But he was saying governments have a role, in fact, not just a role, but almost the primary responsibility and role to make that happen. And you go, it's sort of it just doesn't add up.
And I'm like I said, with those two kind of the points, I found those really confusing. How can putting such services into a kind of a communist collective make them independent? If you want to swap one control with another, yes, you can do that. This is what I'm saying about the control plane, the abstraction. But that's not independence, is it? That's not really, because you're swapping just one with another one, right? And that's what he's trying to do. That's not the same as leaving, like I said, that control plane to be the choice of whoever it is, whether it's an enterprise, just a normal average everyday company, or a government body, a government organization or something, to make sure that they choose what fits for them. Because again, surely no two government entities or bodies are going to need the same services, are going to want to run things the same way, have the same priority, and on and on and on, and criticality.
You can't get
and
departments.
risk appetite.
You can't get departments within governments to get
Exactly. You
standardized,
can't, there's
let
no standard
alone
for that
having two
either.
different governments.
There's no commodifying of that either. There's no commodifying of that either, is there?
Yes, the idea that we need open standards, we need to make everything portable. Yeah, that's fine. But the idea that government can drive that is
No.
just
So what? Yeah. So
no.
why not? Why not come up with a set of acceptance criteria and say to the hyperscalers, look, if you want to bid for these, for these contracts, this is the level that we want you guys to reach, and let them compete to get to that point, and then be able to bid, and then and be successful.
To be fair to him, if you read the whole article again, you have to keep coming back round and sort of reading it 2 or 3 times to get to some of the bits. To an extent, he was trying to put forward some of the things that you've just said, but the overall framework he was putting it in just seemed wrong.
Yeah, and he said, a top-down commodified platform services. And I'm very weary of anything that's kind of top-down and dictation, especially from government, sort of coming down at you. And how would you achieve this when, like I said, every government entity kind of has its own needs, priorities, and how much of that, how much of that homogeny what percentage can you say everybody needs this? Everybody. What percentage? By the time you got to it, that's going to get quite small.
Very, very small. And the other killer, as far as I was concerned, he sort of mentioned it. It's going to cost more money and take more time.
Yes.
Of which we have neither.
Yeah, and we don't have that.
Not have money.
Not with AI. Not with AI chasing us.
All the time to do this.
Yeah, I agree.
It's only going to happen through the innovation of individuals and companies. I'm sorry.
The last one that made me laugh. We'll try and put this up on the screen. Is the chart that was in his article, which had electricity depicted as a layer.
I know.
I didn't get that. Surely that's a given. You can't switch anything on without electricity. So, what's the point of having that as part of your architecture layer?
But this is the whole. But this is back to the whole utility. He's trying to make everything like a utility.
Yeah.
And we've come to the conclusion over the last 20 or 30 years that IT isn't and never will be a utility. It's too many moving parts, too complex, changes too fast for it to become a utility.
Yeah, the cloud is a utility, but not IT itself. And I just finished doing a presentation where around the sort of the telco technology, where the telcos are moving away from making it a utility because they know that they can't move fast enough if they try and turn what they do as a utility, which is how their thinking has been so far. So kind of moving towards open source and cloud native. Anyway, we can talk more on this. We will we'll drop all the details in the description for you. But Paul, let's move on to our next topic. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. Okay, so topic 2. This is a LinkedIn post by a chap called Rocky Bhatia, who's an architect at Adobe, apparently. So interesting. And he's talking about microservices anti-patterns, what not to do with microservices. So I thought that's a novel approach and kind of putting lots of effort, behind that, which I thought was, I thought that was a good way to do it, because you can learn as much from, what you shouldn't be doing, as much as kind of, learning to do something. So we'll put the chart up on the screen. Really good chart. How many did he have in there? How many anti-patterns? 16 was it or something? Can't remember. Yeah, 16. There we go. Okay, 16 anti-patterns.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're obviously not going to go through all 16. So we're not going to be able to do those justice here and go through every single one. But overall, what was your thinking about kind of this approach and the kind of looking at sort of microservices in this way?
I, I think it's good. I think it's very good. In fact, one of my colleagues at Blur is a great fan of anti-patterns, and so anytime we're having a debate, he will always throw in, "Well, what are the anti-patterns here?" And it makes you think
Mm.
about things that you're doing badly, which we need to think about. So yes, I thought the approach was interesting. For me, as a non-technical in terms of developer, I've never developed a line of code apart from a few very simple link ones in my Burroughs days, which we won't go into.
No.
But so I'd always had the sort of suspicion that when we'd moved from sort of monolithic mainframe-based applications into this microservices world, then we'd swapped, we'd got speed, but we'd increased complexity.
Yes.
And in that complexity, I thought there were so many areas where we could get it wrong. And this was a real interesting one for me because it sort of brought together that sort of general feeling I had that, the idea, yes, we're very, very fast, but my God, as individuals, we like to cut corners.
Yes. Yeah.
We
So
like to cut, and this is what this is showing, that if you cut corners,
yes.
it goes wrong. And I've actually got a lot of time I've tried to look through them all. A lot of them I didn't understand in any way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
but I got the point he was trying to make. And I
Yeah.
think, right.
And yeah, I mean, let's kind of just run through them because he's got like a summary of them, and they're obviously on the chart. So again, as we said, we'll make the chart available. So he says in a distributed monolith, so create hidden coupling even when services look separate. So that's obviously not a good idea. Over splitting, so turns every kind of turning every feature into its own service. That's true. A lot of people will just keep sort of separating, not like having an invoice module and something kind of a more of a modular type of approach, but they'll actually kind of break down the invoice module into even smaller sort of microservices. And that kind of looks at things like the chatty services, so it makes it more chatty. And there is a complaint about microservices in general being too chatty. I will again mention that in this topic, because there's some other ones, other posts that I picked up on that are kind of in the vicinity of this one. And then things like synchronous chains actually increase the latency and failure sort of rate of things as well. Obviously, shared databases kind of make deployments sort of difficult across teams because you've got different developers maybe having different priorities and things like that. And then the other one, which is quite interesting, was wrong boundaries. So actually services having the wrong boundary in terms of what is their remit and what is the area that they should control. And so somebody might be writing a particular service, but then says, "Oh, I also need this part," and then they'll write a small part within that service that does this other thing, but actually there is a bigger service over there that does this other thing, and he or she should be APIing or calling to that other bigger service rather than writing their own little routine within his kind of bigger service that he has.
The boundary one was an interesting one. And I think it sort of will run into some of the other things we're going to talk about later, which is this idea of being domain centric rather than service centric.
Yes.
And it was that resonated with me, that said, actually, you're getting too into the weeds here, guys, what you've just described, rather than thinking, what was I actually trying to achieve in the first place? And so it was an interesting one, and it will play into
very, very much. So that and things like no consistency in terms of the workflows, retry storms is another one. Timeouts, there's an observability. There's a number of them I think which really resonate, and that I think, I think is really picked up on the right ones there.
And and data consistency too. No data consistency strategy.
Correct.
And we've said over and over again, isn't it, that data's been the sort of, the battleground on which an awful lot of people have failed because it's not in the sort of state that's needed to develop these type of systems.
Yeah, and we have that problem in sort of the bigger world anyway, let alone microservices. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
makes sense,
absolutely.
definitely. So he says, and I quote, he says, microservices don't need more services; they need better discipline. Fix the anti-patterns early, and the architecture finally works the way it was meant to be, the way it was meant to. So I agree. I think with that. The that's kind of really the best approach for that. Now, like I said, there are a number of other articles I picked up on in this area. So one is suggesting to make microservices a distributed monolith. So actually make them more of a distributed monolith. This is from a guy called Mohammed Yasser N. He's a architect consultant. Again, we'll try and make all this stuff available for you in the description of the video. So he's talking about 3 criteria for identifying how to do that. So a single database dependency, a synchronous everything, and a shared deployment. Those are the 3 areas to look for when it comes to microservices actually looking more like a sort of a distributed monolith approach. So that's kind of the idea behind that.
Yeah, given that in this sort of distributed microservices world, you've got lots of different developers working on individual piece parts to what's going to come together as the whole. The question comes is how do you mandate, how do you monitor and control the quality of what's being done? Is it being done the right way?
Correct.
And of course, the problem then is that you start to slow down the development when you have to do that.
Yeah.
So again, we've got to come back to this. Where's the natural balance between speed and reliability, if you like? I call it, or speed and effectiveness.
Yes. Yeah. Let me just correct something on what I just said. So on this chap's post, Mohammed Yasser. So I said make, but I meant to say maybe your microservice is actually a distributed monolith. So this is actually more anti-pattern. So he's identifying 3 areas as I just read out, those 3 areas, and we'll try and make this available for you. But he's saying be on the lookout that if your microservices look like this with these 3 criteria, then it's more like a distributed monolith than actually a microservice. Yeah. So I just wanted to correct that. Now, there's another post which is from Hassan Mustafa. She's actually an article called Microservices Architecture. So he actually really goes through all the details. He talks about monoliths kind of breaking things, SOA failing, service-oriented architecture failing and being too bloated to really fix a monolith. So again, link in the description of the video in regards to his article, which is quite similar and talks about microservice architecture. I think that's a really good kind of intro one. Another article called The Hangover by Vladimir Petrov, who is an enterprise architect. And he's talking about, he's saying that microservices were supposed to unlock speed and autonomy, yet for many teams, they quietly became a complexity tax that slows delivery and multiplies failure modes. So that's what he's talking about. So clearly he's a kind of not really enamored with microservices, he goes into kind of a familiar story of kind of making a small change that turns into a choreography across number of services, contracts, deployments, and so on. Debugging becomes a distributed archaeology, and a number of other things as well. So that's that's an interesting one. I think he's kind of maybe taking it too far with that, because I think if he's kind of saying it doesn't work at all is not necessarily true, because what else would you go back to? You'd go back to the old ways of doing things. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right. We had to make trade-offs, I think, with we certainly don't want to go back to the old ways of developing applications.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because of the way the world changes around it. If you have monolithic albums, you have to keep picking them apart to put the new stuff in.
And I mean, I think it's more about architecting microservices better based on, what not to do, those sort of anti-patterns, and also evaluating whether you actually need microservices for something. Don't just do microservices for the sake of microservices, or maybe because your first microservices project was relatively successful and you kind of got a little a little speed boost, and now you're kind of looking to microservice everything, even though you may not need to do it. Maybe a kind of a modular approach, a cell-based architecture or something like that, still running in containers is adequate for what you need. The other point here is I picked up, I'm not sure if it's all of these articles, but at least one or two of them, they seem to confuse or conflate like microservices or the app, wherever it's running, with the containers. There just seem to be kind of inconsistency in the kind of how they're really describing that. And then the final one, which I picked up on, is I think this is a long-standing one. Microservices can be "quote unquote" chatty. So by Adel Al-Mansouri, and Adel Al-Mansouri is a solutions architect, and he's talking about the primary root causes of microservices being chatty. So again, more anti-patterns, but specifically around the service communication. So again, he mentions things like the wrong service boundaries, so misapplied context, for example. What else? Data ownership. So we just talked about kind of that being, it's being unclear or being violated. Over reliance on synchronous requests and responses for everything. So if you're kind of in that sort of chain, and sort of A to B to C and then C breaks, what happens? Do you wait and do you time out and that kind of thing? So that sort of one way of communicating, that synchronous kind of way of communicating is not really helpful with that.
I think what we ought to do is put all 16 of those anti-patterns into Claude 4.6 and say, if I ask you to write anything now, if I ask you to write an application,
don't do this.
I'm damn sure you don't do any of these. but again, one of the things that AI ought to be good at is knowing what is best practice.
Absolutely.
And being able to follow best practice, irrespective of the time pressures on it. And I think you come back to manual coding, timescales. I've got to get this one out. Do this. All right, let's just rather than having to do the right thing, we'll just take this shortcut. All those sort of thing pressures will go away with AI. Go away, literally. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, I think put all those 16 must-know microservices anti-patterns into Claude 4.6, and then see if it improves the.
I would like to see. What I would like to see is kind of more, not just the AI code generation and vibe coding has become the kind of the spike bit that everybody's focused on when it comes to using AI in code development, right? But what about if we stretch AI a little bit more to the other aspects of writing an application? I don't care whether it's microservice or a monolith or modular or whatever it is. I don't care. But when we're writing and we're designing and we're architecting it, how about if we actually use AI in those prior and post stages as well? Now, I think people might argue and say, well, yeah, Richard, but in post, it's already being there because QA and testing and stuff, we do use AI. So AI now generates the tests for us when it comes to QA, doing QA and stuff like that, quality assurance and so on. So fair enough with that. But what about the prior, the design, the architecture? If I'm a enterprise architect or a cloud architect or solution architect or something, I've done most of those roles, and I write and I architect something, I want to be able to drop it into, an AI model, ChatGPT or whatever, or Claude or whatever, and actually kind of ideate a little bit on that for this type of stuff that we're talking about, this anti-pattern stuff that we're talking about, and what you're saying about feeding it into an AI and talking about it with an AI. I'd like to see that. I think that surely is a positive thing, no matter which way you look at it.
Yeah.
That's going to help you to develop yourself. It's going to help you. I'm not asking it to, I'm not going to write something on the back of an envelope and just drop it and say, okay, so make that official for me. But actually just bouncing off the idea, using the AI as a coach, using the AI as a senior enterprise architect kind of thing, right? And I think that surely is a positive thing.
Yeah, we talk about humans in the loop in AI, and again, we've been having a big debate inside Blur about the whole way this one works, and it's not, it's not human and the AI. AI and the human are collaborators here.
Yeah,
it's an augmentation routine.
Yeah,
it's not look at what AI's done and now check it. Or look at what the human's done and let AI check it. It's a collaboration. So I like the idea of an ideation piece that you come in the middle of, because I think that's where AI can play a really big part.
Agreed. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. So the third topic, Paul, is one of your articles. I think you need to start this one. Say what the title of the article is, and then.
So the title of the article was "Intent over Interfaces: Why GenAI Could Finally Fix the Business IT Disconnect."
And we've often spoken about that disconnect, haven't we?
Yeah, and if you like, my first sentence was, let's be honest, the gap between business and IT isn't a technology problem, it's a translation problem.
Yeah, it's a communication problem.
It's a communication problem. And from the first day I entered into the IT world, back in the 1980s, this has been an ongoing problem, and we keep thinking we've maybe sorted it and we haven't. And I used the swing sort of cartoon, designing a swing cartoon, which was around in the 1980s. It was exactly the same, and it's still the same today.
Yeah.
And so we've been seeing over the course of the last few years various intent-based services, or intent-based networking, and so really what that means is that you're trying to tell the system what it is you want from a business perspective. But it hadn't got as far as application development. But I think, the arrival of GenAI and the arrival of very powerful tools like, that we're now starting to see, means that there's a real opportunity to bring business into much more closely into that. It was a handoff before. Business would say, oh, this is what we need. We need, a sales order processing system, go away and design it. And it was a handoff, and they sort of left it to IT to go away, to architect it, to code it, to put it all together, and then come back and say, what do you think?
Yeah.
And a bit like what we've just been discussing on, ideation routine, it was that's not what I was after. Oh, go away, back around the loop again, try and play around with it, get it to the point. And it even right down to, when it starts to run, you think, it's still not right. So you mess around with it and you get this awful hybrid. And you made a comment the other day, quite off the cuff. I don't think you realized how it was. We were talking about one of your favorite commentators talking about Kubernetes should be valued on the sort of balance sheet, because it was such value, and you were going, we were talking about it, and you went, trouble is, he says, the board can't even spell Kubernetes, let alone understand it. And that's been the problem, that we've never had this ability to translate a business intent to a sort of technical output.
Yes.
And it was a two-way thing. It wasn't not just the fault of one side or the other. It's the fault of both sides. Neither side could communicate. And now you come, and so really the former way I was saying was that Gen AI particularly, is it going to enable you to say, deliver me, and let me go and find the actual, I gave a sort of clue as to the sort of techniques that, or the way in which you sort of prompt it.
Yeah.
The prompt is going to be different. The actual prompt, you can't just say, "Oh, go away and deliver me a sales or order processing system."
Right.
You have to say, "I want it to do this, this, and this," from a business perspective.
Yes.
And
I was just going to say, so it kind of strikes me a little bit as the business being declarative about what they want, and IT being imperative about what they can do or deliver. And I would really kind of, I don't know how that fits in. I'm trying to kind of, I mean, just as an observation, that's how I'm kind of seeing it. The business says, well, I need a sales platform, or I need a training platform to train on, I need an enablement platform, or HR needs an enablement platform for all the new recruits to kind of put them through the factory line of our company, and kind of learn all this stuff about our company. So then IT goes about either procuring that or building that or whatever, and then they come back with something, and the business says, it's not really exactly what I was kind of, and then they kind of go back and forth, and so the business doesn't really know IT. They're just declaring what they're kind of, in a declarative way, they say what they want. It's kind of that Kubernetes sort of approach and GitOps approach, really. Whereas IT is kind of very, every corner is a 90-degree turn, and decimal point has got to be, it's kind of very specific in terms of what it can achieve.
I think you can bridge the gap, and I found the sort of, I gave an example. I said, you can describe goals in natural language. For example, build an onboarding app that collects documents, routes approvals, and keeps customers informed. So I think, like any interaction with AI, the prompt is everything. I keep telling my wife the prompt is everything when she's talking to Alexa, because Alexa will say, I don't know what you mean, basically.
and you as well, like for me. Darling, prompt is everything.
Prompt is everything. Yeah, absolutely.
Context. And I need context in the prompt, please.
So I guess the answer is, you won't ever be able to get the managing director to come down and sit with the system developer and go, this is what I want.
Yeah.
But I think within, this declarative approach, there's probably fewer steps. And I think you can get business people sitting alongside development. But I'm not saying, when we had fourth generation languages in the 80s and 90s, we were saying there is a certain type of person who will be able to do this. Now, we never got to that point.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to get to that point now. So I'm really pushing people to say, think about, as you say, the intent of the business. We'll come back in future cloud states of play to talk about value and how do we generate the sort of the value for the business that Kubernetes discussion was having.
Right.
Which I think we'll come back around the loop again. But I think we're getting closer to that. But there is still an education process that we need to go through with the top level business people.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want, or anybody who's at sea level, if they want to, build an app or something, they can always try base 44. They can just go to and just say what they want, and then the model will build it for them.
In one way, it would be a good thing to get them to do that, just to get around their heads.
As an exercise, yeah.
As an exercise, just do that.
Yeah, I did that with So we were talking about, the length of time it takes to build a landing zone and stuff like that, and the services that we can offer around that, and why it takes so long, or why do you need these things, before you can start building. And then I actually put all our management team through a build exercise to actually just build a simple virtual machine in a cloud environment. So we've got them all AWS accounts, and then set of instructions. I got one of our architects to write it all out, and as you do, it's kind of give an exec order, and then we set them through the labs. We did like 2 or 3 labs, and they set up their own virtual machine. They put an app in there in a hello world, kind of very simple stuff, and did a kind of a 2-tier, 3-tier sort of web app. And it was all ClickOps. It was all kind of, but the idea was to do ClickOps. It wasn't kind of to automate it through a Terraform script or something. It was to actually appreciate what does it take to build something in a public cloud. And they absolutely loved it. Even the people are kind of recruitment, senior recruiters and HR, attached to our division, loved it. They absolutely loved it. They couldn't believe that actually their virtual machine came up and said "Hello World," and they got the all the layers working and everything. So so I always kind of remind them, and I said, remember that exercise that we did, So just kind of give them an idea of how it works.
I think that's great. I think that sort of thing needs to happen. Again, how far up the chain can you get that? In terms of the sort of senior management actually doing that sort of stuff. Maybe they can. I don't know. Maybe there's a new generation out there that will do that. But I think I just believe we're much closer to being able to have that side-by-side collaboration to get the application done. I think the idea that they now understand what it takes to put a system up on the cloud is an interesting one, and should get more people to do it. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, so you kind of go from the business intent, which is the outcomes, as you say, to you're saying that kind of gets diluted when it gets converted to technical requirements and kind of strays from the original vision. Now, I think the next point I picked up, and you say generative AI enables a shift from requirements driven to intent-based development. So this is where I'm saying, you're kind of saying, I'm translating that as being requirements-driven being declarative and intent-based being imperative sort of approach to what you're doing. So that kind of is anti-cloud native, but nevertheless, in order to make it work for the business to get what they want out of IT, that's fine. I'm happy with that, because it finds a way for us to be able to bridge that gap, as you say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of if you take the idea that America and Britain are separated by a common language, I want to get IT and the business separated, that level of separation. The fact if we're only arguing about whether it's the boot and the bonnet or the trunk and the hood, we've probably cracked it, and we're at that point. I didn't get the fact that it was, I would have thought intent-based was declarative, but maybe not. Maybe it's just my understanding of terminologies. Because you're declaring what you want. This is what my intent is. This is what I need out. This is the outcome I'm looking for. Can you go?
Yeah, but it's a kind of a, I mean, the business people can't dictate and say, oh well, and I wanted that, to be in a Kubernetes cluster, and you got to build infrastructure like this.
You're absolutely right. You don't want them to do that. That's not their business. What you want is that for the sort of, if you like, that gap between what they want and what you can deliver to be as small as possible. What you have to do in between. So the bit you did with, getting them to see, with the clicks, put up their own VMs, is a great way of explaining and exploring them. That says this is the sort of complexity that we have to go through to make what you want work at the far end. It isn't just a case of, if you say it very simply, I can just magic it up. It doesn't work quite like that.
Yes.
But What you don't want is the multiple steps we've always used to have in terms of, systems requirements, various requirement documents,
Yeah.
round and round the houses until it was, it's the old, send reinforcements, we're going to advance, became send reinforcements, we're going to advance. By the
Yes.
time it reached the generals,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand that. I just think it's the business is kind of more on the declarative side and IT
Yeah,
is more on the imperative side. However, like I said, I'm not arguing with it. I'm just observing that. But
yeah,
as I said earlier, if that actually helps both parties
so much
to, as you
better.
said, to kind of, make that gap closer, smaller, then I'm okay with that. I got no problem with that. Because ultimately it doesn't, ultimately it doesn't really matter what it is as long as it kind of,
Yeah,
it gets to the point and fixes the problem.
it's, I suppose I've made a career out of, trying to help people bridge that gap. I mean, as both as,
A
sales
lot
and
of consultants do that, Paul.
a lot
A
of
lot of
yeah,
consultants do that.
but I was doing it as a sales and marketing guy in my early role, and now as an analyst, I'm still doing the same thing. Is
Yeah,
I'm helping do that translation, and
yeah,
I'm just seeing an easier way of doing it than me having to
yeah.
flog,
But
flog it to
you're
both
retired,
sides.
not retired now. So semi-retired or retired, not retired, as we like to call it.
Yeah, I'll tell you another story about that later, but not
Cool.
not now.
Yeah, let's leave that for offline. Okay, so you kind of go from, and the other thing that you're saying is the core idea is that the Gen AI changes the relationship between business and IT. So what did you mean by that? Are you saying everybody's going to get a subscription to Base 44 and go and write their own apps, and then say to Gen AI,
No,
just put it in that thing? What do they call it again? Production. Put it in production.
yeah, no,
And then suddenly the IT guy's going, "What's this app that's like holding up everything and causing latency? Oh my god, the CEOs provision their own, CRM or something."
no, I just think that it's if everybody starts to talk the same language, that's really what we're trying to get to.
Mm, mm.
It's a shared
But
ownership. I
active
talk about from a
participants.
handoff to shared ownership.
But active participants, though, Paul, you want
Well,
them to be active. You want the business to be active participants.
uh, in the early phases, yes. If they're not, then you're stuffed. Is my view is that if
Yeah,
you haven't got the
yeah,
business, it's I put it from handoffs to shared ownership.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
not the big white, it's not the sort of big chief coming and saying, I want this app.
yeah,
And you were then having to go away and do it. And it was a handoff. It was actually you being able to say as the IT person, what do you mean by that particular statement? What do you
mm,
mean? Oh, no, no, get them to think so that you're thinking in terms, what do they mean so that I can code it? And you're saying to them, what do you mean? Is getting them to give a better prompt than they gave you in the first place.
yeah. So kind of active participation in things like design and
Yeah,
experimentation, but
yeah,
IT takes over
yeah,
on things like architecture, security, scalability, all the usual stuff that they do, all
yeah,
the techie stuff that
yeah,
they would do. Okay,
yeah,
and we talked about the shared ownership, suggesting kind of Gen AI creates a collaborative model where both sides iterate together and validate the idea earlier on.
yeah. I think, and again, I sort of make the point at the end, but it's Gen AI is not perfect, and you've got all the issues around governance and compliance, security, human judgment, all those sort of things that need to be thought through.
Mm,
And that those sit very strongly and firmly in the IT domain.
mm.
It's no point, some of our business leaders, who are used to being entrepreneurial,
Yeah,
might be very loose with that. So actually, there's areas that you absolutely don't want them to get too closely involved in.
but
But
yeah,
it's that
but I wrote it on my
fundamental.
base 44. But I've already got it running, guys. Look, it's on my base 40. And
Yeah,
IT's going, oh my
yeah,
God,
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
who gave them subscription to base
So
44?
again, there's still some learning for everybody to go through, but it's, you know, unless GenAI gets really good at the whole sort of governance, compliance, security, and human judgment piece,
Yeah.
then I think we've still got,
Yeah.
work to do there. So I'm just trying to nudge people. I think that's probably the best way of describing it towards, let's use the ability of GenAI to help us, say what we want.
Yeah.
But for IT then to feel confident enough to come back and say, what did you mean by that statement? Whereas before it's sort of, and so IT is not asking for, them to rephrase it in IT terms. They're just saying, no, I don't quite know what you meant by that.
Yeah. And you talk about sort of, not replacing sort of disciplined engineers, but AI has, or GenAI has the kind of potential to create new operating models, a new operating model, where intent flows kind of more directly into things like implementation and so on.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
I'm not sure I can go any further.
I think we've dissected it enough, but we get the point. I mean, I think we've put the point across. So we'll include obviously stuff in the description of the video in regards to the article as well. Excellent. All right. I think we're there, Paul.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. So yeah, thank you as always for all the insights. It was good to actually have one of your articles this time into the mix. So that was quite interesting to dissect that. And
oh my God, you'll want another one now.
And so on. maybe not.
I'm retired. Yes.
Retired, not retired. Okay. So thank you, Paul. Appreciate the insights as always. Great. It's a good article, and it's actually kind of good to be able to kind of bounce that a little bit. I hope you guys have enjoyed this month's topics. Thanks for staying with us until the end. Really appreciate that. Let us know in the comments what do you think about all these topics. That would be really cool. If you have any ideas for other topics and articles, drop them in the comments for us. We always love to hear from you, and we'll consider those as well. Why not? That would be really good. Don't forget to support the channel in all the usual ways. It's really important that you do that. It helps me to really hit the next level of subscribers on YouTube. And that obviously helps me to make more content for you as well, and kind of diversify the channel, do lots of other different stuff. That's it for this month. We will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support me. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. Bye for now.